Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Curious Success. This is episode 19, and the topic for today's meeting of minds is where we at with our Black women credibility. So I don't know if this is going to just be something I'm going to turn more into a series. Who knows? I may have, some Spanish people next week. I don't know. But nevertheless, this is an important topic that I felt would be good to converse and bring some inspiring Black women to the forum and actually have this conversation. So I'm looking forward to constructive dialogue, and I am very excited. So as you can see, as you can see the names of each individual that's part of this. As Breland, you want to stay with that? You sure? Okay. I'm just saying. All right. So would like to just jump into the first question that I have for you all. And if you need me to clarify this, feel free to add to bring that to my attention. The first one is, how would you rate the level of complexity from 1 to 10 as far as the management of responsibilities for a Black woman, and why?
Don't be jump right in.
Do you need me to repeat it? Do you need me to clarify anything?
I think that Black women's responsibility and the complexities of it, we are pretty much at a 10, especially if you have children, if you have a family, if you have a spouse, if you have multiple kids, if you're working, if you're participating in the community. I think that there's a huge amount of responsibility on the shoulders of Black women. Not to say that those responsibilities are not also there for Black men, but I think that Black women, typically, we kind of just step up to the plate just to get it done. And we just kind of have that authoritative, I guess, impulse about us, just to kind of want to make sure that the kids are okay, the community's okay, the family's okay. And because of that, we carry a lot on our shoulders, a lot. And I think this kind of ties into another question that you may have, but I think that also translates to the misperception that Black women are angry and
Combative.
we're not approachable, right? And we're not pleasant, happy people. And it's not necessarily that we have to walk around like we're in a field somewhere with daisies skipping about, but sometimes there's a lot of things on our minds and we're processing, and it's not that we're unapproachable, right? And we don't want to just be like, hey girl, or whatever every time we see someone, just sometimes that your mind is occupied. And I think that the misconception is that, oh, they're angry, they're pissed off, they're not approachable, oh, she's a bitch, and let me not interact with her. And it's very unfortunate that that's the label that we get, so.
It's like we have to work harder to prove ourselves when other cultures don't have work is just as hard to prove themselves. So we come off, unapproachable or combative when that is not even the case. You get to know me, you get to love me. But if you're going to judge me before you get to know me, then you're the one who's being judgmental, and it's like, I feel like it's unfair that how a label's already placed on us before we even open our mouths or interact with you. You're automatically assuming that I'm gonna wanna, get into an argument with you, or I'm not educated, I can't hold the conversation. Like, you're just judging me from this, not getting to know me. So, sometimes, we had to walk around proving ourselves, and we shouldn't have to. We shouldn't have to prove ourselves, but sometimes, we're already on the defense where we have to. That's my opinion with that as well. Piggybacking off what you just said.
I would even add that I think with us having to carry a lot, granted, like you said, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm gonna say a 20, because if you really think for the experience of a Black woman in the working space, you have to show up and every time. We are in the midst of a pandemic, and I can guarantee that half of Black women that are in the working world don't really have the grace to just say, listen, I need to back up, right? Like, I need to back off. I need a break. And we are told we have to show up. I remember, I was working for an organization, it was about 2 years ago, and it was just very overwhelming. It was extremely toxic. And, I literally was overly emotional. And I went to my supervisor and I said, listen, I need to leave early. And my supervisor so happened to be a white woman. And she literally told me, no, you can just go for a walk and just come back and continue working. And I knew that if I was white, it would have been like, you know what, you can take off. You know what, if you want to take the rest of the week off, that is completely fine. And for me, granted, I left and I'm so thankful to God for that. But I remember I had to have a conversation, just with the leadership. And I told them, as a Black woman, I had to show up in the midst when, I knew I was not capable of being present and you forced me to be there, right? Which made the environment extremely toxic and extremely harmful. And so as a Black woman, people don't think that we have weak moments. People look at us as being a superwoman. And granted, like, we are bosses, but at the end of the day, we're still human beings. We still need to rest. We need, we need to heal. And so I have noticed, like, just especially now, there's this misunderstanding of what it means to be a Black woman. Yes, we're amazing and we're great, but I think people forget that we're humans too, and we bleed. And when we bleed, we actually bleed red like everybody else.
Yeah, I also agree. I think I agree with Joy. It is at a 20, and I think the complexities of Black women come with all the isms, right? So the racism, the sexism, and we have to carry that every single day. And it's a strong
Another one I want to add, which I feel is really important. I'm sorry to cut you off. The lookism. The lookism is real. I learned that recently.
What is the lookism?
What is that?
Is based on appearance.
Yeah.
So
RBM.
based on appearance, whether it's like light skin, dark skin, big booty, not big booty, all of that good stuff, like that is another.
Even how we wear our hair.
That like how people will show favoritism, show judgment, things of that nature that will kind of like box people, So just wanted to add that in there because I learned it recently and I was like, that is really important. And it's probably even more important when it comes to Black women, but, or significant enough that it has to be noted.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the lookism, I learned something new today. And I think this whole idea of a strong Black woman, it's like, why do we always have to be strong, right? Why is it not like the strong white woman? Why do we always have to show up as being strong and like we have it together? It's okay. We can cry. We can be emotional. And it's okay for us to have an attitude. There is nothing wrong with that. And what I've learned in my professional career, which is why sometimes I really just don't give a F, because a white woman can show up and be nasty and be rude and do half of what I do or any of us do, and she's praised, right? It is not my job to prove to white people or white supremacy that I'm worth it. It's not my job. It is your job to unfold all what white supremacy has taught you. It is too much for me to show up to work or to any space and have to prove that I'm educated and I'm worth it. It's not my job and I refuse to do it. So I'm gonna show up as me authentically, right? If you think I am uneducated or whatever, that's on you. And that's something that you just have to work out for yourself. I do think what I would like to change for Black women is for us to not always try to be that strong Black woman. It's too much. Our mental health is important. Our communities are on our back. Our families are on our back. Like, we're carrying so much every single day and we have to take care of ourselves. So for me, it's okay if someone don't think I'm a strong Black woman. I'm all right with that because I don't want to walk around with the pressure of proving to everyone that I can do all these things when I'm just really trying to survive.
So let me ask you a question based on what you just said. Do you think it's okay? So for me, I think I want to change the narrative of what people think of me or my dark skin or my Black skin or my Black sister. So I do want to prove to you that I'm not what you think that I am. So I respectfully disagree in saying that how it's not my job to teach you about my culture, about myself. Maybe if I do teach you about my culture, about myself, then you'll respect it. You'll understand. You'll want to know more. You won't just be, you're not going over ignorance, and saying how Black people, they eat this or they eat that, or they think they're all of that, or they're combative. If you get to know me, let me show you that. No, let me come into my world. I work up just like you. I have a 40-hour a week job, a respectable job. I have a family. I'm married, so I fall into the same category as another person would, or another female would. So maybe I want to teach you that how I'm not just your typical chick that grew up, in housing, or grew up in, on welfare, or whatever you think, whatever negative title you have. Maybe it is my job to teach you, and we're all not that same way. We all don't fall in that category.
Yeah.
Maybe I could teach you, or revamp your mind, your thought process of what you perceive Black to be, or that strong Black woman to be. That's my opinion on that. I wouldn't mind changing somebody's mental on what they think of me, because you're only judging me by just looking at me. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree.
I think there's some
I
dual
agree.
ownership there, right? So I think that we have a responsibility, right? And it's not just even as Black women, but just as people, right? You have a responsibility that if you're going to a job, you should show up, right? So you have to come in and you should know what you're doing. And if you don't, you should seek assistance to help you get to where you need to be, right? And then when you're home with your family, right? There's also an image there, right? That you have to uphold for your children, right? Because you don't want your kids to be slackers. You want them to work hard and to get everything that the world has to offer, right? So, and then you also want your culture and everything else you want to educate your children to make sure that they have that knowledge as they grow up, right? And then when you're in the workplace, sometimes you do have to educate people because they are ignorant, right? But they too have to educate themselves. It's not one-sided. Like it just can't be that I have to show up and say, hey, this is who I am. I'm smart, I'm this and I'm that. But at the same time, we shouldn't offer any level of ignorance to their perception, right? So, and then once that happens, it's very hard to change someone's view about whether you are intelligent or you're not intelligent. You can do a bunch of brilliant things following that, but it's that one thing that you did that they thought was so egregious and so ignorant and so and just wrong because you're Black, right? That you get that label placed on you. And it's very hard to switch around. But at the same time, white people, Spanish people included, Asian people, they all have to educate themselves on our culture as well. And I think that that's not done in their communities, right? Like they're culture focused, but on their culture and then the white culture, and not so much on the Black culture. And that's a huge problem. So like you see a lot of going on nowadays, like you have a lot of businesses and firms and banks and everything, they're doing all of this education, right? The sensitive education on how to interact with other people that don't look like you, right? And they want to make it a safe place and a happy environment where everyone can express themselves.
They
And they
call
don't
that
have to
diversity
feel,
training.
right, correct. Well, at my firm, it's called sensitive training.
Yep, sensitive.
Because
Exactly.
it's not just like, it's across the board, right? Like you should be sensitive to women, you should be sensitive to gays, the LGBTQT community. Like you have to be sensitive to a lot of people, and then you have to be sensitive to people's views as well. So it's not just necessarily the color of their skin or their sexual preference, but there's a lot of the things that go with it. And I think that there has to be a responsibility across the board that everyone should educate themselves. And if you're working in an environment where there's a mixture of people, you even more so should be educated about the different types of cultures and beliefs and so forth that exist amongst those people. So I think that there's some dual ownership across the board. It's not just us, it's them as well. But I don't think that we should be on bended knee and there with a tray out and hand of biscuits and honey saying, please accept me, I'm so smart, I'm so this. No, if you come in and you show up and they can't respect it, and they're going to overlook you and move on to some special flower, then it's time for you to go. You have to move on to something else that's not for you, right? But I do think that we all have a responsibility to play our role, to play our part in this society. So
Agreed.
I want to add something.
mhm.
I wanted to address the lookism. I think that I'm going to rate it a 10 as far as like Black women's management and responsibilities. Not only do we have to deal with being a female and dealing with all of the perpetuations that people put on us saying that we're incapable. We have to deal with the, I want to say, racism amongst ourselves that has been put into play via slavery, just keeping the slaves separated, you know, the light-skinned Blacks against the dark-skinned Blacks. And that is still continuing on to this day. And then we don't even have the support amongst ourselves. So yeah, I'm going to rate that a 10. Just want to throw that in there.
Yeah, I wanted to add one thing about what we were discussing before about, I don't think it's like my responsibility. I think ignorance is bliss, right? And I think that we are taught to learn about like white culture, where is there really a white culture? Whatever. Let's say American culture, right? We're taught we're taught that we need to like learn these things. Google is a hell of a tool. You can learn a lot from Google. So if like you really come to the space and think that every Black person is from housing or on welfare, your ignorance is already so deep that it's not, I cannot take ownership of that ignorance to prove that we're not all like this, because I know that not all white people are rich and live in these like great houses and are like really good people. That hurts differently for me. I know that because I have educated myself to learn and like understand that people are different, right? In each culture and each race, you have hierarchy. There's the rich, the middle class, and the poor. Not every white person is rich. Not every Black person is like poor. I've done that research, and I think that it will be too much for me to take it up on myself to say, now I'm going to teach you. I think me showing up as my authentic self and giving my authentic self every day, you can learn from that. But I'm not like Sherrice, like Sherrice said, I'm not going to go down on bending knees to say, I want to prove to you that not all Black people are ghetto. Like, I'm not, like, you know, if you already think that way, you have a lot of unlearning to do, and I just can't give that to you. So I think I do agree it's a dual thing, and how you address it in the workplace is like important. Like if someone is like, say something like egregious and you're like, okay, let's talk about this, then we could step to the side and have a conversation about it. And I think that is my responsibility, right? Because if it's like they're in my face and you're saying something that just is just not right, yes, let's talk about it, and I'm going to address it this time. The next time I may have to take it to HR because now it's just getting out of hand, right? I think that's my responsibility. But to show up every day to try to prove that that all Black people do not fit in this category, I just can't do that. You can educate yourself just like the rest of us and the world and those who want to educate themselves have, to just learn better and to just do better.
Yeah,
And,
I agree with that.
I wanted to add on to what was mentioned because I agree with you on that. What I've been doing personally, I would say since working from home, it's been about, it's definitely been over 7 months. What I have found myself saying more is I've just been calling things out. I noticed that working in the non-profit field for such a long time, I realized that everyone who works there does not need to be working there, right? And people really don't have that sense of, so yeah, like people are just racist that actually work in the nonprofit sector. Like I'm just gonna call it as it is, right? And I have noticed that I've had to be the person really in the meetings where they're like, okay, we have all of these Black, you know, like students that aren't doing well in our like IT prep program. So, you know, yeah, you know, we need to, you know, like we have to kick them out. I have learned that yes, it is tiring to have to carry things. But what I've been finding to be very helpful is I am so unapologetically who I am, and I'm gonna call things out. I'm gonna say, well, we have to remember the population we serve. And because I know you don't read, and because I know you don't know history of us, this is why they're coming into our program and they are not equipped. That's why we're technically a first stop program for them. We're not painted as that, but if we're dealing with this population, we are. And I have had to be the one to say, listen, we need various types of trainings, dealing with culture sensitivity, dealing with implicit bias, because the reality is we have some racist people, or okay, so I don't want to say racist per se. We have some people who are not culturally open. And I think that as a Black woman, or Black people in general, we have to be okay and comfortable to call people out. And there is a way to do it where I'm not going to be like, okay, like you're stupid or you're ignorant, but I'm going to be very monotone and say, why do you think this is appropriate? Right? Because again, like when you look at a lot of organizations, they're very numbers driven. And when the numbers go low, you can easily say, we're not fully equipped to handle this population because we have people who are biased. We have people who might be racist. We have people who've never worked with this population. So I think for a Black woman, just in the workspace, we have to be okay with like calling things out. But on the flip side, I've experienced calling things out and having it, really just burned me in the butt in the end, which is still not fair because yes, we can be fighting the good fight and calling things out. And yes, we find ourselves, people are petty. And I want to take it up a notch that even in, working in an organization where there are other Black people that should be our ally, we should be collectively together, could sometimes be the same people to really turn their back on you too. So there's just so many levels to it.
Can I quickly interject?
It's draining.
You brought up a point that I feel like we don't get enough credit for. We are the most diplomatic when it comes to calling people out outside of our race. I feel like we are the most diplomatic when it comes to that. We like, okay, we probably thinking on ahead depending on just how the situation might have been handled and just the level of sensitivity or what lines might have been crossed of like calling a white person a hunky or whatever being the case or a cracker. But, in most cases, like I just feel like we always like temper ourselves where it's like, okay, really thinking before we speak. We're not just quickly just throwing that out there, because I think we're so sensitive to ourselves being mislabeled. It's probably more of a reason for why, like how we will express ourselves in that way whenever we are calling someone out, that we'll actually take a time to also be considerate of their feelings. And like, I don't know, like if there is like another being of people that do that more than us, like, I just don't really feel like that is more of a case than like Black people. But, I feel like, we're kind of like high on the list, if not number one.
Yeah, and I think it's because we're also so kind of like also afraid of like what is the outcome of calling someone out, right? So like we're within ourselves. I know what I do. I think it through. I will take a night home before I go back to my boss's office to talk about it because I want to make sure that when I go in, because I can also be temperamental. So I want to make sure when I go in, my feelings are extracted from the situation, right? And then I'm like literally only speaking the truth. This is what happened. This is the result of what happened. And I try not to say this is how it made me feel, but this is how it impacted the organization. Because I think a lot of our bosses care more about the organization than they do about feelings and like what we think, right? So like we think a lot before we speak because we're just afraid of these labels that are already placed on us. So it's like very conscious that, I have to approach it this way and not use this word and that word to really get my point across. So it's very taxing as well. But that's something that we just do.
I'm so happy we touched on that because I'm printing out something that I want to get everybody's feedback on it. Stemming back from what you guys were saying, that as far as if we come across something and depending on how we address it, it's how we're labeled combative or we have to worry about, is my job going to be on the line because I spoke up about a situation where I know it was very offensive. So a couple of months ago, as you guys know, I work for the railroad and we had a project going on and we were installing a switch. And every time we do a major work, we put out a program. And sometimes on the cover page of a program, you will attach an appropriate picture for whatever work you're doing. And I was the recipient of this email. And when I opened it up, this is what I saw. And I was so enraged. I didn't know how to address it. One of the images that was in the program was this. This is one, right? Another one was this. And I felt the person who added these symbols and images, because the railroad is somewhat have systemic racism as well. So it's okay for them to depict whatever, when I see these symbols, I automatically think of hate and racism. Had I put a BLM flag and used the railroad platform to publish it, I probably have to be fighting for my job. So how is this okay? But yet, when I tried to speak up about it and make noise about it, and I told him outright, if he doesn't resend the program, I'm not coming to work the next day. And this is how it's, because this cannot be acceptable. This is to me, and he added this one. I don't know how you guys perceive this. To me, I interpret this as white power. I don't know if we all on the same page as that. But what more do I need? How is this acceptable? How is this acceptable? But yet, if I put BLM, oh my God, here we go. What type of company do we work for? We don't use the railroad's platform to promote this. But yet he still has a job. But when I try to say something, it's like, just leave it alone. He didn't mean no way about it. There's freedom of speech, because my research shows that how the American flag with the thin blue line doesn't necessarily mean it's not a hate symbol. But when President Obama was in office and BLM, the organization BLM started up, they came out with, all right then, so they had their BLM, we're going to come out with PLM. And since then, now when you see it, some people say, no, the meaning behind that particular flag is, officers, firefighters, when you see the red stripe, because they put their lives on the front line, and some have died on the line of duty. I respect that. But now they flip it, because now we have BLM, so now they counteract it with PLM. But again, regardless of, I have freedom of speech. We all have freedom of speech, but there's a place for it, and utilizing your workplace as a platform to distribute or produce or publish what can be perceived as hate is wrong. But yet when I try to speak up on it, I was told to leave it alone. But I know that if I had published literature with any form of Black Lives Matter, the fist, I'll be in HR explaining why did I choose that, this way to express myself. But this person, nothing was said about it. It was swept beneath the rug, and that was it. No one else ever talked about it. No one else ever said anything about it. And it's like, this is why I go back, is it my job to teach you or say something? Because a closed mouth doesn't get fed. If I don't make noise about it, then I'm just leaving it for the guys behind him to continue to think that it's okay to continue producing mass emails with these symbols on there.
Well, I totally think that you should not be quiet, right? So that's something that I think part of the problem, right, when it comes to Black people is, right, our history of slavery and always being quiet. Because if you speak up, right, you got beat, you got whooped, you got sold, removed from your family, beaten to almost to your last breath, right? This is our history. So I think that there's like an innate quality in all of us, right, that we're hesitant. We're not always so quick to be responsive to certain things, right? And then we do cower sometimes and think, well, you know what, maybe I should just leave this alone. I need to keep my job. I have to keep food on, my family's table. But there's different ways that you can go about speaking up, right? And you may have had a verbal conversation, but maybe you need to have a written one. right?
sent
Maybe
one
you
out.
need to send a letter to someone that's over your boss and the
I
person
did.
that's over that person, right? And get a few other employees to sign off on that letter with you. In essence, create a petition and keep going from there and so on and so forth, because it's not acceptable. And although probably in the railroad in which you work, Black people are probably the minority, right? And white people are the majority, which is typically the case in this country. They're always going to be catered to, and we not, right? So if we want food off of the table, we need to go and get it, right? And no one's going to listen to you, like you said. Closed mouths don't get fed, right? So you have to speak up and you have to do something and you have to keep pushing forward, because everything that you do and every ounce of effort that you put forth is 1 ounce less that your children are going to have to put forth, right? When it's their turn to enter the workplace and it's their turn to become part of the society that is not built for them, right? So I strongly agree that you should definitely push forward. And
Oh,
you know, I mean, everything with the, I don't know what that other symbol was. It looked like a lightning bolt to me. I mean, I'm not up on my my white
I was like, is that Flash? Like, what's going on with that? Like,
you know, I like the nooses and stuff. Okay.
And that, this was my point. Like, you put this on there, how am I supposed to interpret it? What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Like, why would you use this out of all the symbols? Why this? So I can only interpret. I'm going to assume it means white power, but you led me to believe that, because why would you use this symbol and everything else? And they added the symbol on a page where, again, we were doing a program. So we have a department called Third Rail, and they're supposed to de-energize power. So you strategically put that symbol on that page just to only show how, maybe to kind of deflect. But someone like me, I'm overthinking. I'm like, no, this really meant white power. It had nothing to do with the Third Rail Department or whatever. That's how I took it.
Right.
But if that wasn't your message.
And not to second guess you on your interpretation of that symbol, but at the same time, a lightning bolt, right, produces energy. And maybe it's just a symbol of a lightning bolt, right? But because you were triggered by the other images, right?
Exactly.
This may have led you to believe that this also is some sort of symbol to to push forth their agenda of white supremacy, right? And to make other people that don't look like them feel uncomfortable, and to let them know that they are still there and they're in power. And we basically are going to run you around the way we want to run you around, and our lives matter, no one else's does, right? But I mean, my interpretation of that symbol, it just looks like a lightning bolt. And then when you gave the background on the fact that there's energy and everything, that one might be, but you should definitely address the other two, because those are clear. Those are extremely clear. And I'm certain with the money that people pay in taxes, right, for this railroad to run, they would not want their tax dollars, right, going towards someone's personal agenda that does not affect them, right, or positively affect them. So
I've tried. I've written letters, sent it to the IG, and nothing.
You have to keep doing it, right? Like Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So you can send one letter and nothing happens, but you have to keep going, and you have to become a nuisance, right? You have to constantly, every time, oh goodness, this woman again, right? Like you have to be there constantly in their face. That change. That makes people uncomfortable.
This is true, but it's not, now it's like, oh my God, look at this Black chick, now here she is being combative, stirring the pot. But yet I know, I don't know, but I'm almost positive if I had sent an email out like that, I would be fighting for my job. I would have been in HR defending or explaining why did I use these images on a program that had nothing to do with nothing.
Well, now I have a suggestion, right? Whether you choose to do it or not is totally up to you. But I mean, it depends on how comfortable you are in your position. But I mean, maybe you can see if that theory is accurate, right? Put a fist up and submit it and see what happens. And then if you're treated differently from that other person, then this is your evidence to say,
well, magic.
That's good. That's good.
Magic. You didn't have that same energy, right, when I came to you with this. So if you allowed it to slide for this individual, then I would think that you would offer me the same courtesy, right? Yeah. I thought that it was okay if this person was able to do it. I thought that's what we were doing now, right? Yeah. That's part of the project. No, was I mistaken? Did I interpret that wrong? Because that was the impression that you gave me. Oh my goodness, my apologies. I didn't know. So sometimes you got to use that Black girl magic. But try it. And I mean, I'd love to hear to see how that turns out. Like push forth, make an effort and see. Can't hurt. There's only one way to find out, right?
Yeah. I've exhausted all other options, you know, and that may be the last one.
I just wanted to add that, like, that's how white supremacy work, and it's like that's white supremacy to its T, right? It's to keep people oppressed, docile, and afraid. So everything that they're doing, it's like, I know I can do it because my white privilege is gonna let me get away with it, right? And because of most of the places that we work are run, operated, and led by white people, and we live in a white supremacist society where we're told to be quiet, or you get food taken off your table, you become the angry Black woman. All these titles are put on us, so then we're afraid. But then I think we're reaching this point where we're like no longer being that afraid, right? I mean, I think that let me speak for myself. I'm no longer afraid, right? Because if I am in a space where it's not equitable or it's not equal, and I can't, the same respect is not given to me as my counterpart, then maybe this is not the place that I want to spend 8 hours a day. Maybe this is not the place I really want to cut my check. Like, yes, I need money to survive. I need money to, not saying that you should leave your job. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just saying, like, when you think, like, for me, when I think deeper into things like that, if I can't speak up on something that bothers me or offended my community, then maybe this is not the place for me, because you clearly do not respect me, right? And like back in the day, we had like computers, right? In the factories, we had machines that did everything. We have become the machines, right? So as much as you would respect those machines in that factory to fix it every single day so you could produce whatever is getting you money, then you need to fix me. If I have an issue with something that's happening, I think that you should, organization, a company should really try to figure out, how am I taking care of my employee? So yeah, I mean, white supremacy to its T is to keep us docile, quiet, and oppressed. And we always have to like push that envelope. Like Sherrice said, to make the world like a better place for our children. So if we start, questioning and asking for answers for some of these things, maybe when our children start working one day, their fight is completely different from ours, because we have already, created
that battle.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Like, we're still fighting the fight of our parents, right? And our parents' parents. Yeah. So, and it's unfortunate because you're 3-4 generations later, we're back on the same topic, right? Yeah. Black lives matter. Our lives matter. Our rights matter. Our views matter. Everything that surrounds us matters, right? We're back here again. And, the opposition is, it doesn't matter. At least it doesn't matter more than ours, right? And that's the position, unfortunately. But it's like we have to be the generation to help our children's generation, right? So that way the same conversation is not had again. I mean, and we all saw from the last election that white supremacy is alive and well in this country, So, yeah.
Agreed. Definitely agree.
I agree wholeheartedly. I would just like to add something. I've been in situations where I find myself having to pick and choose my battles. You should always speak up 100%, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna be human, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I need this job, but this woman is out of line. I remember I was a receptionist and for a company, and I have to have the guests wait, be seated, wait until the person is ready to take their meeting. Simple. However, they wanted to walk in the back, and sometimes I was like, bitch, I thought this was my job. That was that side of me, but I had to conduct myself in a professional manner. I did throw some shade. I called the individual that the person was supposed to be meeting with, and I said, they seem to be in a rush. They're a bit impatient. Is there any way you can open up the conference room and have them take the meeting early? But I have an anger issue. I don't want to say like black people are always angry. We get angry like anybody else would. This lady was really trying my patience. I guess her heel broke, and she decided to throw her funky shoes in the garbage next to me. He's really trying me. I was about to ask her to go meet me outside, so we could discuss how to do yourself in a professional setting. So yeah, I've been there, and I've been I've had times where I wasn't so strong to kind of hold my tongue, and then I went off. So we have our moments.
Well, no one's immune to that, right? Like, we're all human beings, and
exactly.
It's gonna happen at some point. Like, the human mind and body can only take so much, right, before there's some sort of reaction or some sort of snap. And that's with anyone, right? So yeah, you're
exactly.
Except that you're going to get ridiculed for it because you're Black,
right?
And you shouldn't. You have better control.
Well, you know what?
This is right. This ties us into generational trauma, right? Like, our ancestors were beat so much for just speaking or looking, right? That I think that there's something that's in our DNA that kind of affects us now and how we function in the world today, right? So just by you having a reaction to something, right, automatically people are like, you shouldn't, right? You should be able to withstand anything that I'm throwing at you because of your history, right, of slavery. And listen, I don't know too many people, that would have come out of that. And Black people did, right? Like, they tried to enslave the Native Americans, and that didn't work out well. They tried with the Asians, and that didn't work out well. But Africans, Black people did, right? And I think that, like, years and years and years of this trauma and abuse affects all of us now. Everything that we do, our reactions to everything, our inability sometimes to speak up for things, our ability to speak up too much sometimes for things, right? It's not a happy balance, unfortunately. It seems like either we're like, or we're, let me not say anything. Like, it's like, at what point do we, at what point is there a happy medium?
But when do we get to experience that privilege?
Yeah,
that Black girl
privilege? I do want to say I admire the way you're handling the situation. I will say that. I don't know if I would have been so nice, but
yeah.
Because I want to, like all of us are on the same page as far. I want to change that narrative. I want to be able to go in and not, what the fuck is going on? What the fuck? I don't want that to be me. I want to speak and articulate myself. How is this acceptable? How are we allowing this to be published on a railroad platform? And this happened right after George Floyd, so that's why I really took offense to it. And I told my bosses, my superiors, I was like, yeah, listen, if something is not done, and how they rectify the situation, they had him resend the program without any pictures. So that told me they spoke to his superior, his bosses, but still, I don't want anyone to lose their job. I just want to change it because, like we're all saying, at some point, I don't want my kids to work for the railroad, but if that's an option for them, I don't want them to be uncomfortable. I don't want them to walk, the first wrong thing they do, they're getting fired because they're there because we already know they're there for a quota. When everybody else is getting hired because they brother, their uncle, because what's that with the complexion with the that's saying. So it's like, there you go, exactly. And I don't want that for my kids. Another experience we had, my daughter, she goes to a tech school. We live in Pennsylvania. We live in a predominantly white neighborhood. So she goes to a predominantly white school. And the very first day of school, she had an HVAC class. And at the end of the class, I was told the instructor was pretty much speaking to her because she was the only Black female in the classroom. And the instructor was, because she was asking, this is one of my options, because what they do, they go on a rotation and they try, dentistry, landscaping. So they try different courses in the school until they found what they like and pursue. So the first day was a HVAC class, and she's asking, so how do I go about, getting in? What do I have to do? Can you give me some pointers? And this mother effer said to her, and these were his words, oh, you're in a good field. And the reason why you're in a good field, because you're a female and you're Black, you're a minority. And in this field, they only hire minorities. And he backed up with an example. He's saying that how when he started in the field, they hired a Black man. They pay him more money than him because of his skin color, not because he worked hard, not because he got certified, not because he went to school, not because he put in the time. So I'm like, so is that what an educator is doing now? You're telling a kid, that's inspiring to do great things, that no, you're only going to get ahead in life, or you're only going to get certain jobs because of a quota. And I didn't want to be that. So when she came home and she's telling me like it's nonchalant, I said, I said, I'm not gonna say my daughter's name, but I said, no, I don't want you taking that, just a chip on the shoulder. Like, that was nothing. He basically insulted you. He basically said that how your education will never get you anywhere. And that's the opposite. They can take everything from us, but once you're smart and you're educated, they can't take that. You can run your own company. You can become the CEO. And you're the one who's gonna hire the people that won't hire you from the get. So don't let someone determine, the color of your skin is going to only get you a certain type of job. Because are you going to tell me? So is he telling you that how you're not good enough to pursue a dentist, a lawyer, a nurse, a doctor? So I was insulted. So I started with my husband, how do we handle this? And I said, you know what? F this. I am not gonna. Not only I'm trying to teach my daughter what's right, but I have to show them that how, this cannot continue. So I had a meeting with the principal, and I expressed my feelings. And at the end, he was reprimanded. They didn't tell me whether he was fired or what. I hope he wasn't fired, but I want to teach them or let them know that how parents do take offense to it. I don't want your administration department teaching kids that how they're going to get ahead in life is because depending on what field they choose, they'll get it because of their color of their skin. No, that takes away with everything I'm trying to teach her. You're only going to get ahead in life if you go to school and you get that education. Once you have that, no one can take that from you. Because unfortunately, we do live in a world where racism do exist and it's not going to end. And unfortunately, and I explained to her, you're going to have to work harder than your friend that's the same age as you. And, because she's non-Black, she's going to get that job over you. And she doesn't have to have education. It might be because her father is the CEO or her father, she'll have that connection. But you're going to have to prove yourself. Your resume has to be very extensive. It has to have all these, you went to this school, that school, you have to work harder. But once you have that education, you can open up your own business. You don't have to work for the next man or anybody, for matter of fact. You work for yourself, and you're doing the one who's hiring. You're hiring, the non-Blacks, into your firm or into your business, into whatever you want to be, But I was just like, I was so pissed. I couldn't believe how he told her that the only thing that's going to get her is because she's a minority, she's Black, and she's a female. That's the only way she'll get into a HVAC program. That was a big time insult.
I don't want to cut you off, but I think that I disagree with you. I think that they should be fired, right? And some people do need to lose their jobs, right? Because there's no change while people are comfortable. You have to be uncomfortable if you want to see a difference, right? So if you're going to continue, it's just like with the police. They shoot and kill an unarmed Black person, or whatever it is that they are always doing, and they're constantly fearful of their lives, right? But you have tactical training. You've been in the police academy. You should not be fearful for your life every time someone that has a little bit of melanin in their skin shows up on the scene, right? So I think these people do need to be fired, because what happens is they may have reprimanded him and said, listen, don't say that to another Black kid. But maybe he won't say that to another Black kid for 3 months. But in 6 months' time, everyone will have forgotten. And then that same rhetoric will be repeated, right? But then maybe that child won't have a mother or a father that speaks up for them, right? And then that child internalizes that, and it affects their future. Like, teachers have a huge impact on how our children develop, right? Like, yes, the parents, having both parents in the household, or even if you have one parent in the household, but one parent in the household that's focused, right? And I can't say necessarily educated, because just because you're educated doesn't mean that you're intelligent. You have a lot of stupid educated people that are running around, right? They have all of these degrees and they're dumb as dirt. So um, I think that sometimes you don't have parents that are as involved,
Yeah.
right, as some parents. And then those children, my daughter used to love science, right? Absolutely loved science. One white science teacher ruined it for her. Not a fan of science anymore, right? And so these are the impacts that teachers have on our children, right? She played favorites. She didn't treat my daughter as well as she treated some of these little Becky White kids, right? But, and now she's not a fan of science. And she has two parents that are involved, especially a mother, which she constantly says, well, you don't have to reach out to the teacher about that. And you don't need to reach out to the principal about that.
Oh, yes, I
because
do.
the moment that I see that there's any type of semblance of um, activity or behavior that's kind of questionable, I want to address it, right? Because I want them to understand that this is not a Black child that you should mess with, right? And
For my husband.
like leave this one alone,
Yeah.
and maybe you'll learn from trying to mess with this one, and you'll leave the others alone as well, right? But there has to be a collective, and all parents have to be a part and be able to speak up for their children. But not everyone's capable or able, right? It depends on what their life situations are. But teachers have an effect on how children are
Yeah.
developed. We mold them at home, they mold them in school, right? The agenda that they're given, the curriculum, has an effect on how they are developed, right? Our kids are constantly bombarded with whiteness over and over and over again. They're not taught the true history of slavery, right? They're not taught the true history of their people. And, you know, like I work in the intellectual property field, and in my group, I am one Black person, one, okay? And there are probably about 40 of us in that group. I am one. There are no Black attorneys in my group. And do you think that none of them went to school for intellectual property? None of them had any ideas of inventing anything? Like there are no Black people on this planet that have ideas that want to invent things, right? Yeah, hell yeah, there is. But white supremacy, right? And it kind of took over that field of law. And, you know, Black people were kind of scared and terrorized and killed and murdered and raped and beaten, right? So they wouldn't invent stuff. Their ideas, their inventions were stolen by white people and claimed for their own, right? And then now you see what that has done throughout our history, that even now, today in 2020, there's barely any Black lawyers, right, that are involved in the field of intellectual property. And granted, I'm sure that there are some, right, that have graduated and they're more than capable and they're educated, but there's like 40 something white people, and the people that are in charge are white, and they might just be bypassing those resumes, you know? So everything that happens with our children, that happens with us, will affect them later on down the line. And those individuals that don't do right, they should be fired and they should lose their jobs, and they should know what it's like to be put in a situation where they can't function, right? Where things get extremely hard and difficult for them, and they have to try something different. And maybe trying something different will mean that they change their outlook on life and their views and their perceptions and their beliefs of white supremacy, and they'll have a much more inclusive attitude, right? But just passing them along, like with police, oh, I'm going to put him on desk duty. Don't worry about it. Administrative leave. He'll be back, you know, on the job, killing more Black.
And give them a raise while they're on desk duty as well.
Yeah. And it's the same thing for teachers. It's the same thing for everyone in any profession, right? If you give them, they need to be fired. If you give them the pass, chances are they will do it again, because they have, it's like dealing with a toddler, for those of you that have children, right? If you allow them to get away with something, they're going to continue to do it and do it and do it until they're stopped, right? So if they don't learn that that's a behavior that they should not be doing, they're going to keep doing it. So someone has to step in and say, there's repercussions for your actions, and these are those repercussions. And when that doesn't happen with these people that are in positions of power, and they have so much influence over our children and their thought process for how many hours out of the day, that's a problem. That's a huge problem.
I just also want to add that, like, even calling out those in the education system, they don't always have to be like white. And a story about my daughter, she's 6 now, but at the time she started charter school, kindergarten, and in the handbook it said no hair beads. My daughter is getting hair beads for her first day of school, right? So her principal is black, the head of school is black, the person below him is black, and her principal is a black woman with dreads. I was actually at the door, Rashim, when I read this article.
Dreads, but no beads?
Exactly. So I'm temperamental. So
the
I had
beads
to, like,
at Queen.
you know she's gonna have some beads. Every little black girl needs beads. So I reached out to the principal. She never returned my call, and like I just kept taking it up. And I was like, this policy that you have in your handbook is very prejudiced to little black girls, because who else is wearing beads but little black girls?
Little black boys.
Or little black boys, right? It's you're basically calling out black people, period, right? It's like a cultural thing. We wear beads, we put our hair, it's kind of like saying no braids in school. We put our hair in braids and we wear beads, right? So they're like, well, we said no beads because they're distracting. And I was like, well, I really just don't agree that beads are so distracting that it's in this policy that there are no beads allowed. So, I mean, no one got back to me weeks at a time. Like, it took a really long time. Like, I went all the way up, and I went back and forth with like everyone about how this policy was unfair to black children. I live in the North Bronx, predominantly black neighborhood, black or brown neighborhood. You cannot, and everyone in your leadership team, and I called it out like this, the entire guidance department is black. Everyone in your leadership is black. How could you let this be passed down? Because what are you then teaching my child? Right? And it got to the point where they took it out the handbook, and I was not letting up. So I think when we speak about education, when we speak about like calling people out, sometimes we have to call our own people out, because some people get in the position of power that they forget about the black girl magic, the black boy joy. They forget about wearing braids and whatever, right? Because as you know, sometimes when you reach a certain position, for some black people, right? When you reach a certain position or you start making a certain money, it becomes, I'm different from them, right? And that is historical in our black neighborhood, right? I have made it here. I've went to school. I've gotten my education. I'm different from those black people over there. But in reality, no, you are not. Because when the cops pull you over, they don't see Shaneika Nelson with a master's. No, they see another little black girl and you could get it too, right? So it's always important when we talk about calling out people, calling out the black person on the side of you that is just that is also being unfair, who's also being biased, and who's also spearing things that is detrimental to the black community.
Why do you think that is? I'm happy you brought that up, because I was hoping that we would touch on it. Why do you think that is?
Slavery. Divide and conquer.
Yes.
Because I was teaching my kids, unfortunately, again, living out here, the kids don't learn about Black history. But when I ask the kids, do you know who Rosa Parks is? And they tell me yes. And I tell them, give me a history. Oh yeah, she was the first Black woman that she refused her seat and she got off of work, blah, 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 and she got arrested. And I was like, no, she wasn't the first Black woman. She was not the first Black woman. You're being taught that. The first Black woman was Claudette Colvin. I'm not sure if I'm saying her last name correctly, but she was 15. She came before Rosa Parks. She was 15. She was dark skinned. She had curly hair. And our people felt that how she wasn't pretty enough. I'm sorry?
She wasn't palatable.
Exactly. So they didn't make it an issue then. But moving forward so many years, like you said, we're our people are so conditioned. If you don't look a certain way, we don't want that in our school. But this is going back years. Yeah. And this is going back years. And then we have to change the mental of our people too. Accept me however I come to you. I know my history. You should do yours, and you should break that cycle. Don't tell me my kid can't come here because she has beads are not allowed when you're wearing dreads. I should be able to accept that. You know, like we know, and that's the thing about our culture. We come in different shapes, colors,
They say,
varieties.
"Where's your perm, sister?
Oh, listen, if I don't want
Where's
to
your
wear a
wash and
perm,
set?"
we don't respect that. But unfortunately, we get criticized and we get judged by our own people too, and that makes it worse, and it hurts more. Like, how dare you?
And I think when white people say get over slavery, that's why it gets me so angry. Because how can I get over? And they say it a lot. It happened 200 years ago. Get over it. How can I get over some? First of all, I'm not going to get over it. Let's just start there. But how can I get over something that is still, we're feeling the repercussions of slavery right now?
And you're constantly throwing it in my face. So how can I get over it?
Everything that we're dealing with right now, exactly, is the repercussion of slavery. Mass incarceration. Police officers were not around until slaves were free. Mass incarceration is the new slavery. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, don't tell me to get over it, because you're not telling me to get over 9/11. So don't tell me to get over slavery when some of my people are still mentally enslaved, right? Like, let's forget about the systemic racism or slavery that's happening, right? Because it's happening. There's also people who are still mentally enslaved. And I personally think being mentally enslaved is just as bad as being systematically enslaved, right?
The house ends. I call them the house ends.
Right. When you just really, when you think that your people are really against you, when you think that I am your competition, when you, like, you know what I mean? Some people are constantly, this is just how they think. And it is a repercussion of slavery. So no, I can't get over it. And I will never get over it.
I'll never get over it also. That's why, you know, it's my job to teach my kids, you know, about their history. So when somebody's telling you Rosa Parks was the first Black woman to get arrested due to she not wanting to get up after working hard day of work, no, that's not true. They're not going to teach you who the first Black person was. It's your job to know. It's my job to teach you. So when you open your mouth, you know what you're speaking of. You know what you sound intelligent. You know your history. You know your facts. I don't want you thinking that because a teacher taught you that information is correct, because it's not. It's not. It's definitely not. You know, and I don't know how we get over it, to be honest with you. I don't know, somebody, you know, that doesn't look like us who has to speak up for us, you know, because clearly, you know, our protesting, our signs, you know, nothing is working. So what can we do? How do we get to a point where, you know, we're equal, just as we're equal to everybody else? You know, that's all I want. Just, you know, don't judge me and hate me, and you don't even know why you hate me. Why are you judging me? Because you were taught that. You were taught to dislike me. You were taught, you know, whatever you were taught, it's incorrect. Like, when do you get over it? When do you pass that? When do you grow? When do you research? When do you learn?
I think the way to get over it, is to really dismantle white supremacy. Yeah. America only thrives and survives because of white supremacy. The only way that we can be equal and live as equal is to dismantle white supremacy. It starts from there. If we don't start from there, nothing is going to happen.
True.
It start from there.
But how do we do that? Well, everything else is not working.
That it's simple. Like, we don't. All we can do is apply pressure, right? All we can do is apply pressure and make people uncomfortable, right, with the pressure that we're applying. But we don't make the change ourselves, right? That's for the other person to do. That's for the white supremacists to do, right? That's for the Black people that are confused about their own identity to do, and all of the other ethnic groups that are confused about our history and also their position and place in this world, right? It's for them to be able to say, I'm accepting everyone, inclusive of Black people, and treating them equally, right? But change is not going to happen when people don't want it, which is why you have to apply the pressure. Because if you don't apply the pressure, then some people just skip around like nothing ever happens, because they're not part of the world that we live in. So it doesn't affect them. They don't go through the things that we go through. Their experiences are very different. And they don't have to worry. Their children are safe and protected in the schools that are built and designed to uplift them. You know, and they have to be the change. They have to be the ones that make the change.
And I also, also want to add, like, white people will not get up off of that privilege or that status quo because they are thriving off of it, right? They're
Yeah.
becoming millionaires, they're becoming rich. White supremacy only benefits white people.
Yeah.
White people have been able to build generational wealth, right? Or just continue with the wealth of their family because of white supremacy, which is why Trump was so popular amongst white people, because he gave them that, like, we are the good old boys. We're going to save America. We're going to make America great again. Because to white people, making America great again means that I'm securing my wealth, right? America's built on greed, right? I'm securing my wealth. America is great when white people are great, when white people are wealthy, right? White people love Trump because he was trying to secure their wealth. Like, you know what I mean? So it's going to be hard to dismantle white supremacy because it's so tied to greed, wealth, and this and politics. I study political science in undergrad. The way politicians are, they're not for us. I love Obama, but they're not really for us, right? They're not. Right? And politics is tied to white supremacy. So in order for all of it to really change, you have to dismantle the entire system of oppression, system of white supremacy, the government, and start from scratch. America did not start off to be fair and equal. This is not their land. You know what I mean? So you actually have to go back years and years and years to really change everything. But people don't want that to, and the reason why so many people are against it is because changing it will change their status quo. Changing it will mean that they no longer get the wealth that they have, the opportunities they have. White people, some white people still think that white privilege is not a thing, because like, how can you say I'm privileged? Like, how could you not see it? You know what I mean? So it's like people trying to, I don't know the best way to explain it, trying to like keep what they think is theirs and keep what they think they could pass on to their children, because then these Black people are going to come and try to take my things away, instead of saying these Black people really only want the same thing that I have, equal opportunity. I just wanted to add that.
No, you're 100% correct. They're concerned about position, their position of power, because listen, you have tons of white people, you know, and there's some minority people too, that voted for Trump, right, based off his ideals, and they're poor. I mean, we live in an area that's predominantly white also, and you know, you go maybe 10 miles in one direction and there's a bunch of trailer parks. Majority of people that live in that trailer park are white. And that's where you see the Trump signs, that's where you see the flags, the Confederate flags and everything. These people are poor. They have nothing. You are voting against your own interests, right? Like these individuals that are in power, their only focus and concern is to maintain that power and to become more wealthy and make other individuals wealthy as well. You do not fall in that 1%, right? You don't qualify. So why would you vote against your own interests, right? Because there's a belief there that they are in a position that's better than a Black person or some other minority, right? They're higher than them. They could be just as broke. The Black person could have more money, but because they have that color of skin, right? They're not equal to me. I'm above them. I'm absolutely above them. And that's the thing that people don't want to give up, right? Even when they're broke, they don't want to give it up. They want to be able to have something to say that I am better than the next person. And I mean, that's going to take a long time to get that thought process that's been ingrained in people's heads out.
Pardon me, I'll quickly interject.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's 2:25 right now. Normally, I go in a range between 90 minutes, whatever case, to 2 hours, but I also want to be mindful of everyone's time. So I'm not sure if you ladies mind going a little longer. We can push it to 3 o'clock and then cap it at 3. Are you fine with that?
I love the dialogue we're having. If everyone has time,
Okay.
I'm here. I'm here to the end.
Okay. So we're gonna cap it at 3. There's most likely gonna be a part 2. You're all in your bags, and I appreciate this good energy that we are developing thus far. So let's keep on going. Reese, I don't know if you got anything else you want to add, because you was getting the mix right there. So I got you midpoint. So I want to make sure you can continue to share what you need to share.
That's probably that's probably it on that. It's going to take a lot of therapy sessions, right?
So
a lot of therapy sessions going on to get people to treat people the way they want to be treated, right? And that's ultimately it. You want to be treated.
Yeah.
So I know I brought up things in the chat. I don't know if you had any questions of some of the things I brought in the chat, but it was kind of like piggybacking on some of like the comments that were made by you. So I just kind of like added a little something like to like provide like a little perspective of how I interpreted what you were sharing. So I don't know if anyone had any questions on that, but if you don't, then I have another question. I feel like you might have answered, but I think I just want to kind of like just ask it directly and just to see if you have any additional takes on that. Which is, what is the biggest misperception of Black women in America? What
Oh,
is the
but angry
biggest
and
misperception
combative.
of Black women in America?
That's a tough one. I would say that we're angry and then we're incapable. Like I'm
Yeah.
stuck between those two.
Yes. 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 I agree.
You know, just being a woman in general, there's always that vibe that you're just not capable. You're always questioned. You're always like, oh, you sure you know what you're talking about? And then, all of we're victims of our circumstances. Our circumstances, sometimes, we're only human. Sometimes we snap, but then we're categorized as being angry all the time. So I'm kind of stuck between those two. I can't pick one. I don't know if anybody else has any.
I would say it's the angry Black woman, aggressive Black woman. I want to say my biggest trigger is to call me aggressive. I had a supervisor call me aggressive one time while I was like nearly in tears, though, nearly in tears, shaking. She thought I was being aggressive. And when I say I never let up, I never let up. The day that I resigned from that job, I told the ED, you cannot have anyone calling anyone aggressive, right? Because we worked with young people. You wouldn't call a young person aggressive. Why are you calling me aggressive? Do you know what I mean? And so my biggest trigger is to be called aggressive, especially by a white person. The moment, I mean, by anyone, but I think if a white person says that I'm aggressive or angry Black woman, that takes me
To the next level.
level. It takes me to another level. And that's when I will like speak up, and I will not take the moment to think of how I'm speaking up, because you're just gonna get it right then and there. Because I think words mean a lot, right? And don't put a title on me that like you don't even know. And I think what made me the most upset is that I was scared. I mean, I could tell a little backstory. Basically, I don't know, Rashim and Joy, you may know this. We had a young person who was having suicidal and homicidal ideations at the door. And they placed him in the room that I was working with. It was called a career clinic at the time. And he was playing like video games, shooting people and stuff like that. At the time, no one in the career clinic knew that he was having these suicidal or homicidal ideations. So we, like 2 weeks later, we had like a staff meeting and they brought it up. And I'm sitting there scared. My daughter was just born. I'm like emotional, and I was this, and I'm always the one to speak up. And I was like, well, what is the policy around this? If a young person's having suicidal or homicide ideation, why is it okay to sit him in a room with other staff and no one knows about it? That's what I read.
Right there.
So I'm speaking on the policy. So going forward, what are we gonna do when this happens? The girl who was a Spanish girl started crying, right? Because she was a case manager at the time. She was crying. But for me, tears don't come down. I'm a problem solver. How are we going to solve this, right? So because she started crying in tears and I'm over there shaking, and another one of our coworker who's white, and I've worked with her for a long time, felt it, I guess, in my voice and my presence, she came over and gave me a hug, right? My supervisor, she wasn't my supervisor at the time. She was like a director. She went to my supervisor, who I've known for years before that, and told her that Shaneika was being aggressive, and said coworker thought that she was telling her that she didn't do her job. I was like, excuse me? Nothing that I said in there said that she didn't do her job. I said we don't have a policy in place. I was in fear of my life, right? Everyone's here, staff and young people, because this young person was having ideations that none of us knew about. But all you could see is because as a Black woman, I spoke up and I questioned the way you guys handled it. So now I was aggressive. And I was like, no, I'm not you cannot put that label on me, right? And what was the result after it? we came up with a policy. But she was just not okay with me calling her out. And that happens a lot. White women, and let's talk about it, because white women want to believe in feminism, and white women are our biggest, what's the word I'm looking for? Someone help me. White women are one of our biggest, I don't know, I think they see us as one of their biggest competition. Say it again.
Nemesis?
Yes. Because I think what I see though from the white women, some of the white women, I'm not gonna say all of them, because I do really have some that are like, I'm really close with and are really nice. They play this role as, I'm here for the people. I went to social work school and I'll be a social worker and I'm here to save all these Black kids, right? That's how they show up. And in the way that they work, they're then undermining all the Black people who are within that the world, right, of the work, right? So you're either speaking too much or not talking enough, like, or when you speak up, you're being aggressive. When you don't speak enough, you're being docile. What do you want me to do, right? So if you're an ally, you show up as an ally, but their allyship is very out of convenience. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, when I decided to step away from the door, I brought it up to the ED. And I mean, I brought this, when I say I did not let this go, because it really hurt me that she really thought I was being aggressive when I was really like scared and also thinking of a solution so this doesn't happen again.
You were passionate.
Huh?
You were passionate.
Exactly. And when we show passion, they see aggression. Do you know what I mean? And that's good that you said that, because my supervisor at the time that she told that I was being aggressive said, Shaneika's not aggressive at all. What she is passionate. Mm-hmm. And that was the word that my supervisor used at the time. And I just couldn't let that go. Like, I bring this story up every time I could speak to someone, because I also think it's important that if someone put a title on you, you don't have to hold that. And I think for a long, and that was when I think my career changed, where I knew I had to be an advocate for myself. And I had to be an advocate for the next little Black girl that was leaving college and coming to a workspace, because I could not let that go, because I know the way it made me feel. And I wouldn't want anyone else to feel like that. No, I'm not aggressive. Find a better word. You went to social work school. You're a social worker. Would you call your client aggressive? No, so don't call me that. And to this day, I still don't fancy her at all. Don't think I ever will, because I think there's a lot in the words that you choose to use, because you know better, right? You work in this neighborhood, you have clients, you're a social worker, you know better, and that's how you really feel, and your true color showed. So then it was important for me to call that out. Not sure why I started this, but just, yeah.
I agree with you. I think often it's the guilty that accuse the innocent. Like, white people like to say, well, Black people are violent, but look who's committing, the most acts of violence.
A self-defense mechanism.
So I think it's absolutely absurd for them to categorize us as aggressive or angry all the time. Or, sometimes people like to tell you how they would react in certain situations, although they have never been in those situations. So they're not in our circumstances. Had they been in our circumstances, they would have reacted the same way. So I just wanted to add that.
Yes.
I would say one of the things that people assume with Black women and also with Black girls is that we're safe. And the reality is that we are not. When you think of, so having worked in high school, and especially working with college students and such, I see it firsthand every single day. So pretty much when you brought up the example of your daughter having that teacher, I currently now working for another nonprofit where I have instructors that do that favoritism, where I've had to be the one to call it out, which is why I do think it's important that if we are doing the work that like we choose to do, there is a responsibility that comes with it. And what that means is, mind you, I'm not the type of person that likes to call things out. It took me a very long time for me to find my voice, because being in the workforce as a Black woman, I dealt with trauma, and it came mostly from other Black women. And to be honest, like, that is a completely different conversation, because yes, we call out whites, but we also have to call ourselves, because you can have a Black, girl in the workspace that is new, and she can have a Black woman that should be taking her under her wing and having real conversations and teaching her. But on the other end, and I've seen this, will be the same people talking about them, will be the same person throwing them under the bus. And I've experienced that so much, where I had to deal with my own trauma, because there's a lot of Black women in the workspace that are dealing with trauma just that they've received just from whites, but also from Blacks. But I have learned, and you know, like reading on different things and reading on different books, when you see a Black like girl that has been actually abducted, there is no sound of alarm. But when it's a little white girl, oh my gosh, you need to stop the country from running. Black girls are not safe in this world. No one, and it is disgusting. When you look into the school system, I remember when I was last working at a high school, it was about 4 years ago, I had a Black girl. She was extremely suicidal. Everyone was like, oh, you know, she'll be fine, da, 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 da. And they thought it was the appropriate thing to have her speak with somebody who was white. We need more Black women that are therapists. We need that, because Black girls don't feel safe with someone that does not look like them. And we feel so uncomfortable calling that out. We feel like, well, you know, if you have somebody who's white, who is really good in this area in therapy, da da da, like they should be able to fix it. No, because there's always deeper layers that I believe that every Black girl feels that it's hard to even articulate. Where at times when you're in a room with, you know, like you're sitting in a room with somebody that looks like you. I remember one of the high school students, she broke that down to me. She was like, hey, miss, you know what? I need a Black therapist because this white lady is not doing it for me. So there's this you know, like just this thing where Black, you know, women walk around and they should feel safe. And to be quite honest, we don't. We do not. And we see it when it comes down to our laws. We see it when it comes down to certain things that's being brought up. When you are dealing with the case, when you're being beat, when you're being threatened, and if you make a claim about it, you know how long it takes for even anything to happen. And when something happens, it's already too late because you probably already died. And
Breonna Taylor.
Right. That is the perfect example. And we're still waiting. We're still waiting. And so I think that there's this miscommunication. I remember, I'm going to share a really quick story. At my last job, working with college students, I was doing a lot of traveling to a lot of colleges, universities in New Jersey and outside of New Jersey. I was flying out to Cali, all of these things. And I remember I brought this up to my supervisor. And I mentioned to them, I was like, do you guys understand that as a Black woman, I'm going to a lot of these white places in these hotels that your girl don't feel safe doing it. And mind you, I remember I had to beg them. And guess what? They didn't get it. And then now with everything taking place with race, I remember it was the lady at my old job. I had a lot of issues with her. I told her this. And mind you, like she is, I want to say she's half Puerto Rican and half something, but I had to tell, like, listen, you are extremely toxic. All of these things that all these Black women are talking about in the workspace and all the hell we've had to go through, you were the one who were doing all that to me. When I told you everything, when I kept telling you as a Black woman, I can't be lounging around in just like the hotel just by myself if I'm in the middle of nowhere in a very white space, because we're sending all of our students to all of these rural schools. And now with everything taking place, I said, now you see all of these people dying, all of these murders happening. I said, did you not understand that I was literally telling you, like, I am at risk. You need to change my job, and you need to change how many schools I visit. Because when you're visiting about 40 colleges and universities in a couple of months, it is disgusting. And so it is one of those things where there is an assumption like, oh, you'll be fine. Oh, you're smart or you're educated. Because if you have a degree, it's supposed to, for some reason, mask you. But in reality, no, because people look at Black women as objects anyways. And the people that we get a bulk of it from are from Black men. But, you know, like I can go on for years about that, because our Black men do not protect us like just as much as they think they do. They are also part of the issue. So as a Black woman, you're standing, just like you're literally standing alone, because like you don't feel safe from white people. And again, like just when you're under the arms of a Black man at times, you don't feel safe either, because a majority of Black women deal with the Black trauma from Black men too. So it just becomes extremely exhausting, and you feel so by yourself. Like, yeah, you guys, sorry, I went on a whole rant, but I had to do it.
It's fine, but you're right.
Also don't know why my hand is white. I don't know. So I don't know. That does
I
not
was going to tell you earlier. Wilding over there.
I think my daughter was playing with the color on here. I got to talk to her about that.
No, but you know, Joy, you're right. You're 100% correct. And I think that a lot of times, I don't know if they think that we're safe or they just don't care, right? Because it's like, you should be durable. You can't protect yourself. Wasn't you born and raised in the hood? You don't know how to fight? You worried about somebody coming and snatching you away? Like, girl, you got this. They want to run behind you for protection, right? So they're thinking that you're strong enough, and why are you nervous being in these areas?
You've seen it all, dealt with it all, you know.
Yeah, they don't see that you're a female, right? First, and then you're Black, and then, oh, guess what? I'm in an area surrounded by people that don't look like me. And these people may not be a fan of people that look like me. And this is where you have me. But you know, sometimes when it comes to Spanish people, they're a little confused about their identity too. Like, you know, their cultures are very different.
Spanish or Hispanic?
Huh?
Spanish or Hispanic?
Hispanic people of Latin descent. Like their thought process is very different when it comes to things. And it all depends on the experiences that they may have had in their countries, or their parents may have had in the countries where they grew up and then they migrated here. But so they don't get it. A lot of times they just don't get it. And sometimes they don't care, right? They genuinely do not care. Like, you should be tough enough, strong enough to be able to hold your own. And then now you touched on not being supported by Black men, right? I'm teetering with that one, right? Because I believe that there's
all. It's not
right,
all.
right. Not definitely not all, but I think that part of the problem with our entire culture, right, is, and I want to phrase this the right way, right? We've been taught to believe that it's just us. We're on our own, right? There's no support. The Black woman has to do everything. It's just her, right? The men abandon their kids. They get locked up. They run around and hoe and do all of these other things and kind of just leave us, right, with the whole plate to handle and to do everything on our own. And I don't 100% agree with that. I think that is a notion that's been portrayed by media, right? And yes, we've all had our interactions with men, Black men, Spanish men, whatever. We've all had interactions with men that have not necessarily done the right thing. Not to say that they were all Black, right? They could have been from a completely different culture or whatever. But so everyone has had experiences where men have not necessarily done the right thing. And then you have men that do the right thing, right? But white men aren't always protecting white women, right? But that's the perception that's portrayed, right? The media, everyone, this is what they put out there, that they protect their women. The same thing for Spanish men, Latin men, Hispanic men. It's the same concept. And I think it's the same thing for us too. I don't think that they're abandoning us, right? I think that there's a lot of healthy Black relationships, whether they're married or not married. And I think the men are supportive, and in turn, the women are supportive, right? But these things are not pushed to the front line, right? These are the things that's not put on Front Street for us to see and to be able to be proud of and embrace and say, yes, these are my people, right? That's not what we get. Instead, we constantly get flashed in front of us that, oh yeah, Black men ain't nothing. Oh yeah, you get pregnant by a Black dude, he gonna be gone, right? You're gonna be raising that baby by yourself. And I don't think that's the case. You have a lot of single women, single parents that are white and that are also Spanish. It's not just a concept that's for Black people. I think that it's across the board amongst all cultures. But I will say, some Black men are grimy. They gotta step their game up, right? But I don't know. I kind of disagree with that. We're kind of left out in the cold, and then part of that thought process is that I think we do too much sometimes, right? So when you want to carry the bucket on your head, you want to carry the baskets in your arm, you want to have the kids hanging onto your feet, right? You want to do everything. And you want to pull a cart behind you on your back. And then tell the black man on the side, I got it. I got it. Don't
Not
worry.
good.
Don't worry. You can't be mad
You
when the next trip to bring all of this stuff home and he's sitting on the side and not helping you, right? You have to ask for more. You have to demand more, right? There has to be a level of communication that, and I think that we try to prove so much that we're smart, we're independent, we can do it on our own, and we don't need a man to help us or to define us, right? We are who we are. We got Black girl magic. We can do all of this on our own, and we don't need anyone, right? And I think that we're taught from young to be strong, independent Black women, right? And that we don't need no man, we don't need nobody. We should be on our own and not dependent on other people to move forward and progress in our lives, right? And then I think we also bring that thought process into our relationships. And then sometimes we discard that Black man, right? Instead of trying to uplift him and in turn uplifting ourselves and us as a whole, the entire unity, the family, right? We kind of discard them and push them to the side because we're independent. What we need them for? We don't need them. I got this. I can do this all by myself. And I think that we have to also recognize that we're not in it alone, and it's okay to have a partner, and it's okay to build together, right? Because if you have a strong foundation, you can accomplish anything. But a lot of times we don't do that, and I'm also guilty of it. I've been married for what, 18 years now, and I don't always necessarily do the right thing, and I feel like I do too much. And part of that is that I take on too much, right? Sometimes you got to sit back and you got to say, well, you know what? You need to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to step away and I'm not going to. And this is going to be your responsibility. And this is going to be my responsibility. And you got to kind of even out those responsibilities. And if there's not communication and there's just, I guess, ideals, like not even ideals, like wants, wishes, hopes, right? Well, I hope he does this and I want him to do that. But if you don't communicate these things and you don't speak to people and you don't let them know what's going on, and we don't have these conversations with our children, our boys, right? Then they don't know, right? So like I get, you see a lot of interracial stuff that goes on these days, right? But it's not just Black people. That's across the board. Everybody's commingling, intermingling, and doing all of these other things. But I think what's being flashed in front of us, right, is the interracial stuff. And there's so much going on in the background of Black couples and Black families that it's just not put on Front Street. And I think that more of that should happen because, my God, like the amount of friends that I have that, and all Black couples that have been married for years and have children and everything, you don't see that. And then depending on where you come from, like, you know, Ron and I came from the ghetto, right? And what did you see? Young girls having babies. Did you run around with this girl having a baby with that one and with this one? But then when you leave certain environments, and those environments, while they exist, they're small, right? It's not the big picture of our communities. It's a smaller picture of our communities, but that's the picture that's put in the paper. That's the one that's portrayed to everyone in the country, right? Like, this is what they're doing. They're animals, jungle bunnies. They're out there having babies. They're not raising them. They're doing this, they're doing that. The Black man's good for nothing, right? And the Black woman just spreading her legs, hence being an object, right? Just having babies, and we all want to live on welfare and all this other stuff. And that's not the case. That's just a small percentage of people, and it's across the board. It's not just Black people, it's white people, it's Hispanic people, Asian people. All of them are part of that problem. But I think our little speck it's like a little molehill that's turned into a mountain. And I think that's not the case. I think that we have more Black families that are functioning as a unit than we don't.
I just want to add that, like, when we spoke a lot about how things tied back to slavery, and I just want to also tie back how Black men were removed from their families, right, during slavery, right? So even if we see this show up in our communities right now, we know where it's coming from, right? And it's also another reason why we can't get over slavery, right? Because this is some generational trauma, like, right? So dad was always removed. Now dads are being removed because they're incarcerated,
Yeah.
right? So I think that is showing up over and over again within our communities. I also do want to say that, like, this, especially on social media, this whole thing about like interracial dating, black men ain't shit, and it's always black men versus black women, it has just become
out of control.
Yeah, it's just something for a conversation for people to talk about. I'm sorry.
Is it though? Is it just a conversation for people to talk about? Because I think it's deeper than that. I think that it's another form of divide and conquer. It's another slave tactic, right, to separate us and to keep our eye off of the prize, right? Because we are stronger together. If black men and black women, like all of this other stuff, oh, black men voted for Trump and black men did, oh my God, that was like spread across every radio station. Black men didn't do their part. Black men didn't do this. And it's like, what about Hispanic men? What about all the Hispanic men and women that didn't vote, Democrat, right? But that wasn't plastered all over the place to show a divide amongst them. But our problem is because we have Black Lives Matter, and there's so much going on with the movement right now for us to be recognized as people, as humans, right? They need to stop that. That has to be slowed down. We're getting a little too much traction. And so now you have to put forth a different thought process for people to say, oh yeah, yeah, the black men are doing this and the black women are doing that, because you have to separate us. Because if you keep us together, we're unstoppable. So I don't think that it's something for them to talk about. I think that it's done intentionally. I think it's done intentionally to separate us.
I definitely agree with you on that. And I think also when it comes, so with all this, I really think about investment, right? So culturally, so I'm a black woman, but I'm also Nigerian. Culturally, you are investing more in the upbringing of a black woman versus a black man in the home. In a lot of African cultures, it's like that. So you have boys that are raised that don't know what it means to be a woman safe space, that doesn't know what it means to cover a woman, right? Protect them. Usually sometimes with the covering and protection is financial, right? Okay. And so growing up, I used to always go back and forth with my mom, like, you spend so much time on me, and also like having an older sister, on us making sure that we're doing what we have to do, being thoughtful, being kind, but the same energy wasn't applied to my brothers. These are going to be someone's future husbands and somebody's future father. And I think what I've noticed now, especially, with social media, is when you see Black conferences, when it comes down to all of these groups, it's always with Black women because you profit from us. I commend the Black men that I know that have created spaces that are geared towards bringing up Black boys. And there's not enough of that, because you can have an event that's open to all, right? And who's usually there? Black women. When you think of the funding, and there's certain groups and such that need to be for Black men, it's not there. Because when you look in the education system, how many Black men work in there? It's not a lot, because it doesn't pay. And so I think that part of the reason why we are seeing a lot of the issues with the Black men and Black women is because we haven't invested as much as we need to with the Black boys and men now. You have men that, being in my 30s, being single, when I tell you the trauma I have ran into with Black men currently now, I'm just like, oh my gosh, you're like literally walking and creating havoc and chaos in all of these women's lives. Just, and honestly, just that's the reality, right? And so just when you think of Black marriages, right? Like when you think about the amount of black like women who even hope for marriage, for honestly, like just for me, and again, I do want to get married, but there's so many other Black women that I know that have literally taken that off their radar, because that's not pushed around in our agenda. Again, it really goes back to investment. And again, I can think of less than, I don't even want to say I could think of 5 Black men that I know that have done the work when it comes down to, I see a Black boy, I'm pouring into him. I'm having these tough conversations on, how do you speak to Black women? How do you, cover her? Like, how do you protect her? Because they're being raised by social media. And that is horrible. right? And so now with Black, women, we're at this point, we're just like, listen, if I have to date white, I'll date white, because I'm here waiting, I'm here showing grace, because now there's this whole thing with Black women having to deal with struggle love, or more so toxic love, to get a commitment. And like, just,
That's not love.
I don't sign off on that. But mind you, on social media, you see all of this struggle love, and with a lot of Black women think that, okay, I have to endure in the BS really in order to get a ring or to keep a ring. And you see it a lot just kind of within the church too, right? And so I think we have to just, again, like, just even going back to slavery, yes, the men were taken out. And so now I think we need to pour more into the men, and it has to be the men pouring into men, because the men that I know that can't pour into men are pouring into women, because they're profiting off of this. They're profiting off of us. All of these relationship male gurus, like, again, like, I'm not going against them, but every Black, like, women, like, just like therapists that I personally know have said, that's kind of toxic, right? When you can tell women what they need to do in order to be healthy, it don't change anything kind of until you hit the other person, which is the Black men. So I just think that they haven't been as invested into as they should. And pretty much as a result, that is why Black women now don't feel as protected. Because I remember I've had to have difficult conversations with a couple of my Black male friends. And I said, you understand that when it comes into protecting Black women, isn't just about, okay, like, if you're walking down the street and you see like an officer and you're guarding her. No, it's about how are you handling her emotions. You playing games and playing with her emotions and breaking her heart. And if you're just using her for sex, you're part of the problem too. And the issue is a couple of Black men don't see it as that. And they just see it as protecting Black women as solely being just a physical thing, when it comes down to, crime and pretty much whatnot, when emotions is part of it, right? How you talk to her, how do you defend her when she's not in the room? So I just wanted to kind of point that out.
I also want to add that, like, hyper masculinity in the Black community is like a thing, right? So it's also like how we parenting our boys. And I think Joy mentioned it, how we parent our daughters and how we parent our son is very different. I see it in my own family. I have an older brother. The way my mom deals with him is very different than she deals with my sisters and I, right? So like, we also have to think about how within our community, how we raising our sons, right? And also, I think in society too, Black men are very objectified, right? They are seen, I forgot what it was called back in the day, where they call like buffs or something. I can't remember. It's like a slave term that they used to call the really big Black men.
Yes, buffs. It
was buffs, right? Yeah, so like Black men have also been hyper sexualized and being hyper masculine within our communities, right? Are we teaching them about like emotional intelligence, how to show someone that you care about them without having sex, and why is everything going back to sex all the time? And I think as parents, anyone who's a parent, I have a daughter, so it's a little different for me. How are we parenting our sons? And for me, how am I parenting my daughter to see an F-boy from across the street? Like, you know what I mean? And in every culture, there are F-boys. I've dated white men before. They ain't no better than a Black man, honestly. I mean, they're not. It happens everywhere you go. And I think because we live in this community and the media is telling us Black men ain't shit, we're really buying it. I believe in Black love. I believe that Rasheen said what F-boy means. I believe in Black love. I believe that there are really good Black men out there, right? And also, just to touch on it, I'm a single mother. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a single mother. Because for me, I'd rather leave a situation that's not healthy for me than to stay in it to make society feel better, right? And that's what I wanted to mention before. There are a lot of people that stay in marriages that are unhealthy and toxic just because I want to be married. I don't want to be seen as a single Black woman. Whereas now, Black women are up and out of here because I'm the breadwinner. I could take good care of me and my daughter. I don't need the stress or the struggle. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It goes back to white supremacy and oppression. it would make a single mother feel bad to be like, oh, I'm a single Black mother and I can't keep a man. And then you start being down on yourself. Whereas that it's okay to leave a toxic relationship. There is nothing wrong with being a single woman or a single mother, or wait until the right person is there. You know what I mean? And it's okay. And I think the pressure, it goes back to complexities of Black women, right? The pressure is on us so much to not fall into these categories that has been placed on us. We don't want to be angry. We don't want to be single. We don't want to be a single mother. All that is just objective. It's okay. There is nothing wrong with being in any one of those categories if you fit in it, right? If I was an angry Black woman and I fit in that category, I will own up to it because I am what I am, right? But if they place a label on you and it doesn't fit, that's when it becomes an issue, right? Or when you buy into the idea that Black women are not worth loving or worth marrying. That's all a mental tactic to make you really second guess yourself. Like, am I not really worth marrying? Yes, we are worth marrying. And when the right person come, we will get married. Until then, we could focus on ourselves and do what we need to do. There are a lot of women, white, Black, Afro Latina, Latinx. Not sure if I get the term right. It changes every day, every week. They are staying in very toxic relationship because society is saying that you shouldn't be over 30 and single. I'm cool with it. You know what I mean? Because my peace doesn't come from society's label of me. Because if it did, I would be someone I'm not. You know what I mean? So I think every time when we think about Black people, we have to dig deeper. From what we're reading, who's doing the research, who's writing the paper, what are they trying to prove? Do you know what I mean? I remember in college I took a class called The Black Family, and I read this article about he was a mayor of New York back in the day. His last name was like Monahan, and he coined the term welfare mom. And if you read this article that this man spoke about Black women, you'll be so disgusted. He was the mayor of New York, and he said that we do nothing but spread our legs, have 9 kids by 9 different men, and then under Clinton, Black women became the faces of welfare. But Black people love Clinton, don't they? Do you know what I mean? So we have to be very careful what we are taking to be true, because who's doing the research and why are they doing it? So for me, I'm very intentional about what I read and what I take to be true. Right? What I take to be true is my experiences and the experiences that I know around me and legitimate research, right? And if the research is not going to help my community, and it's just to prove a statistic to create a law or to create more birth control for the Black community, then it's not for me. I think we also have to do a due diligence to see what is right, what is a clickbait, and what is a conversation to entertain social media.
Yeah. Well, I want to touch on what Joy said, and also
hold on,
you said, Shaneika.
Real quick.
Oh, real quick.
So
no, go ahead.
Just let you all know.
3?
We went 5 minutes past 3. Listen, trust me, I am greatly enjoying this conversation. I'm greatly enjoying that you all sharing these poignant viewpoints. I just got to be mindful of time, you know. So if Reese, you want to end with your brief points, we can end with that. You know,
and my points ever brief.
I know. Don't start telling mad stories, you know. But
okay, you know, enjoy the mad stories.
I greatly enjoy it, but just be mindful of time. So, you know, we can end with your points, and of course, we know like we're gonna look to regroup, and continue our conversation. So, feel free, sis.
Okay, so
she lost her train of thought. Thank you, Rasheen.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Gone. Out of my head. But let's see if I can get it back. So the media, right? And Ra, you had plugged in Cardi B and Offset and all this other stuff. You know, part of with social media and the different era that we live in now, from you know, way back when we didn't have so much access to the internet and all the foolishness and the shenanigans that we see all the time and our kids see, right? There was a different way kids grew up, right? Like boys learned from the man that was in the house. women, young girls learn from the mother and the father, vice versa. Whereas now you're seeing all types of things on the media, and kids are being exposed to a bunch of different things. And when you have kids that want to be cool and all of this other stuff, they see like the ignorant Cardi B, and it's like, oh my God, I want to be like her. And it's like, yeah, great. She makes, good music for whomever may like that. And but she's not a representation of me. Right. And there's a lot of other rappers and other people that are out there, and they portray this level of ignorance, right? And they want to, the media and everybody wants to put this out there that these people are a representation of Black people, and they're not. They're a representation of themselves, right? No woman should remain in a toxic relationship regardless, not, for society, not for anyone, not for the kids, because all it does is hurt the kids, right? So you don't benefit them. They don't learn. Well, actually they do learn, but the behavior that they learn is to be allowed to be treated like dirt, right? And so what they will end up finding for themselves is a toxic relationship. So no woman should ever be there, especially one that has children, right? And also, if you're like dealing with a dude and he's not right from the beginning, keep it moving, go left. It's like, don't even allow them that much time into your space to be able to change your heart, right? Like, you have to have self-care. And as Black women, we have to have self-care, and we have to be strong. And there are some instances where they don't, protect us financially and in other aspects, but we gotta take care of ourselves too, and not allow these inconveniences to define us. And your daughter's adorable. She's cute as a button.
You're mute.
Her picture came up on your.
Oh,
on your
sorry,
screen.
I accidentally logged into her Zoom. My laptop was about to die, so I had to go get the charger. Okay. Thank you.
Once again,
good conversations though. All brilliant women. I loved every second of it.
This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you all taking the time. Saturday, it's we some people, if you celebrating Kwanzaa, you celebrating Christmas, wherever you at, in terms of just like transitioning to the end of the year. Some people's like, just I'm taking 2 weeks off, I'm taking 1 day off, whatever you at, in terms of trying to like re-energize and like get yourself prepared for what's happening come the new year. I just definitely appreciate you all taking your time today just to have this discussion with me. Great dialogue. So clapping my hands again. I actually definitely look forward to revisiting the conversation with you all. And we can talk offline to try to figure out, when it's convenient. It might be in the new year, which might make more sense. Like as I mentioned previously, just like end of the year, you getting your mind right. You probably with your family, you not with family, whatever you doing to center yourself, for these vaccines and all them stuff. But anyway, let me get off my soapbox with all that stuff. But overall, just like, just as you all like just winding down and so forth, like I think it's important just to figure out what makes the most sense in terms of your schedule and things of that nature. So normally what I like to do at the end of each episode is just allow the opportunity for my guests to plug anything they might want to plug, bring to attention anything they might want to bring to attention briefly. So if there's there's anything any of you would like to plug, something you might be working on, Shaneika, you might be working on that second book. Joy, you might be going on tour come New Year. I don't know. Tashanta, you might have the web series on, on the upteenth level of upteenth or whatever. Just wherever you try to take it. Sherrice is like, launching hair products. CMO is doing something. I don't know. But if there's anything you would like to plug, feel free to plug that now if you have anything you'd like to share.
I want to know about the book. Can I get it on Amazon?
Yes, you can. I call my daughter to go get me a copy. She's
nice.
I mean, share the information because I'm definitely going to pass it on.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I read it in the chat. This is my first book, Malia and the Wobbly Pans. It is available on Amazon and also on our website, Little Inspired Trends.
Share the website, Rob.
I'm going to put it in the chat.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I wrote this book in my office at the door. And it's about my daughter's first day of pre-K. And I think, the reason why this book is so important to me is because there's so many books out about Black girls or Black boys teaching people racial competency, and I think it's not their job. It's a book about a carefree Black girl living a carefree life, going to kindergarten and hating her wobbly pants. And I think it's so important to just humanize Black children. Right? They go through everything that anyone else goes through. I do not want my daughter to be 6-year-old teaching a white kid how to be racially competent. It's not her job. It's their parents' job. And there's so many books that's being pushed in our faces now off that. You know what I mean? And I just wanted to write this book about a carefree Black girl. The illustrator is also Black. So like everything about this book is a Black girl magic. A Black author, a Black illustrator about a carefree Black girl. So it's available on Amazon, and I'll also put the link to my website.
Nice. I'm looking for it now. Okay.
Anybody else would like to plug anything real quick?
I'm ordering your book right now.
You found it on Amazon?
Thank you so much.
I'm looking for it right now on Amazon.
I'm gonna try to see if I can find you guys.
There we go. Now, do you have free shipping? I don't like paying for shipping.
Oh, it's on Amazon Prime. So if you have Prime,
perfect.
There we go.
yeah.
I mean, but
Okay.
I don't want to take away from contributing towards the Black business. So
Amazon is cool. It's easier.
okay.
Okay, no other plugs?
If you want to stay posted on what I'm doing, you can go on my website, speakwithjoy.net. I'm going to type it in. So I had just recently published a book in July. So the title of the book is, it's called This Is Not Your Typical Finding Your Purpose Book, because I think a lot of the times we focus on purpose as being this extravagant thing.
Can you reiterate that again? I think we didn't hear you clearly when you said about the book.
Oh yeah.
Was
So
it describing it?
Yeah, so my book is titled, I have a book like in my parents' living room since I'm visiting them in Georgia, but don't know if you can see the cover, but the book is titled, This Is Not Your Typical Finding Your Purpose Book. I think now with everything taking place in our world, a lot of people look at purpose as you being rich, you having all this money, when in reality, purpose has nothing to do with you. It's about serving other people. People should be benefiting from it, right? And so, I wrote it. And I think it's so interesting how like God works, because with everything going on as we go into the new year, everyone is asking themselves, what is next? What do you want me to do with everything that I've been exposed to? And so I'm really just talking about it from a real lens, where in reality, purpose isn't birthed through just this happy ending, never having to deal with anything. But in reality, purpose is really birthed through pain. And it's really based off of how you choose to handle your pain is going to really play a role as to just what it is that God wants you to do, right? So I decided to take that leap of faith and publish it. And yeah, so you can get all of that on Amazon.
Your book as well?
Yes.
All right, I'm on there now too. Okay.
Okay, so 2 books down now
Yeah,
for
2.
Malia and the wobbly pants, because I had to get one for my niece. So I got one for my girls and one for my niece. And I need also your information, Joy, so I can.
The website is included in the chat as well.
Okay, speakwithjoy.net. All right.
Sorry, I'm going through your website right now, Shaneika.
Oh, thanks.
Now this is Black Girl Magic. Okay.
Right.
What's the name of your book, Joy?
It's titled This Is Not Your Typical Finding Your Purpose Book.
Oh, this is.
So we make some self-help.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you all. This has been a great experience. I'm looking forward to us revisiting things and having a part 2. Always, one thing that I always like to end off any podcast that I do is remain and stay curious. That that positive energy and that craving for to feed your interest is always very important, is very vital. That's how we educate and bring forth that education to be able to share out to others, to help them understand our empowerment, who we are, and hopefully be able to break down barriers in between us and connecting with us. So with that being said, peace. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much.